Kingula is really one of those species which shows how size obsession and selective breeding can together turn into a slippery slope. Plenty of observations have, to the joy of male enhancement salesmen everywhere, confirmed that the individual with the largest pincer wins the most lady crabs. It's a fact. But what's been less emphasized is that this social climate among these snipper colonies has resulted in males who have difficulties with their overall performance, as the sheer weight of that claw puts a strain on their bodies. They may hit like a truck, but they're also nimble as one. Ever seen a Kingula fight a Floatzel? It's a hilarious sight. Kingula are built tough. They are a Pokemon species that live in an unforgiving environment, where tides constantly crash down and shove them onto rocky shores. The delicate and meek perish in the hands of their more ambitious kin or from the relentless waves. Although its mighty pincers weigh them down, they are deceptively fast. They move in spurts and ambush their prey by surprise. Their large pincers also give Kingula a surprising wingspan, allowing them to clamp down on Pokémon 6 feet away from its body. The vice grip is nigh unbreakable, allowing their smaller and more dexterous claw to start slicing through skin and muscle. Against a more resilient or sturdy prey, Kingula may slam it to the ground to knock it unconscious. Their powerful legs can also pin their food down while feeding. Kingula can even overcome Cloyster with incessant bludgeoning of their enormous claw, although many Kingula usually give up before succeeding in the kill. Kingula are aggressive toward each other. They only know how to communicate with one another through the snapping and slamming of their pincers, mostly for intimidation. Male Kingula would pound their large pincer to the ground to win the approval of females. Kingula's large pincer is a keystone to its survival. The smaller pincer begins growing when Kingula loses its large pincer due to wear and tear from crab fights or clubbing too many Cloyster. A small pincer would emerge from the ligament that just lost its large pincer. Kingula come out bigger after each molting period. Yes, size matters. In the non-Pokemon world, the most famous example of extreme asymmetric clawed morphism is seen in the fiddler crab, whose males also possess an enormous claw the length of the carapace. The rapid eating movements of the smaller claw make it look like it's playing a fiddle on the bigger one. However, the males use this thin fiddle to show off to females and spar with other males for mating rights. In other words, the fiddler's fiddle is used for the crab manifestation of penis fencing. In reality, because crabs mix gametes outside the body, there is no penis, so I guess they have reason to try to compensate, the eternal male condition of mind's bigger egotism. However, unlike the fiddler crab, Kingula have no visible sexual dimorphism, with the females also possessing the enlarged left claw. So, either the claws were specialized for a different purpose, or female Kingula have massive penis envy. Moving away from crabs in search of an explanation, one will find that specialized claws are not at all uncommon adaptations in crustaceans. For instance, lobsters use a variety of different claw types for different tasks. They have a thinner cutter claw used for tearing through meat and limbs or holding prey down, and a thick crusher claw used for smashing the shells of crabs and other shellfish. They also have smaller claws on their second and third pairs of legs used for neatly and accurately rasping meat off of shell or bone, and bringing them to the mouth. Fiddler crabs use their smaller claws for this fine work. Looking at Kingula's claws, it's safe to say that unlike the thin and ornamental fiddle of the fiddler crab, Kingula's thick, large, muscular claw was meant for smashing, the extreme version of the lobster's crusher, only with 10,000 extra horses. This beast was clearly meant for smashing through some serious shellfish. Most likely, Kingula's massive claw and resulting 130 base attack were evolved for bashing through Shelder's tough shells of base 100 defense, a task it's quite effective at in the Seafoam Islands where both species were initially discovered. It's quite literally an incredible grab hammer. Since Kingula's claws are so impressive, often people forget about its skeleton. Kingula has an exoskeleton, external skeleton, made of chitin. This exoskeleton is so strong, it is able to reflect bullets. In primitive times, People used the exoskeleton of King Ella to make armor to protect them. Over time, I questioned why is their skeleton so hard? I have come to this solution. A long time ago, King Ella and Crawdaunt lived in a similar area. Crawdaunt loved to fight and would challenge the King Ella. Because King Ella's claw is so heavy, Crawdaunt would usually kill the King Ella before the King Ella could raise the claw to attack. Eventually, all the softer-shelled King Ella died off, leaving only the King Ella with hard shells alive to reproduce and create a generation with even harder shells. King Ella is, or appears to be, a fairly bog-standard crustacean, if such a thing exists. Oddly, King Ella appear to be purely carnivorous, where one would expect such a creature to eat more or less anything it came across, in accordance with the relative difficulty of obtaining sufficient food and competition with other carnivorous Pokémon in the seas around most regions. Indeed, there was one particularly famous experiment performed which involved throwing King Ella into a saltwater pool covered by an algal bloom. Regrettably, the King Ella always fainted as soon as they touched the algae. The experiment has not been repeated. In any case, King Ella appear to be relatively specialized predators. It is one of the few Pokémon with the physical strength and tools necessary to break open the shells of well-protected Pokémon such as Shellder and Cloyster, which are certainly beyond the skills of such Pokémon as Seadra. However, this theory is not without its flaws, not least that in most regions, King Ella appear to live in entirely separate areas to their supposed shelled prey, with only Unova as a known exception. As such, it is more likely that native populations will feed more commonly on those universal fodders, Corsola, Magikarp, and Tentacool, while its ability to survive for longer without feeding would give it an advantage over other undersea predators such as Lantern and Seadra. King Ella will also encounter Staring, Horsea, and Chinchou in its natural habitat, but its great unwieldiness would almost certainly stamp out any hope it had of feeding on those particular creatures. Indeed, we must talk about King Ella's claw, as that is one of the most interesting things about it. While there is surprisingly little knowledge available on King Ella and its complex communication methods, tolerance of high salinity, and other vague observations made over the years, one particular point has been endlessly repeated, apparently without any further investigation, that King Ella has a 10,000 horsepower crushing force in its larger pincer. Leaving aside the bizarrely well-rounded number, we must give leave to question this value on a common-sense basis. A hydraulically operated Jaws of Life will rarely exceed 10 horsepower for the pump. Multiply that power by 1,000, and if true, it's a wonder that King Ella's pincer does not shatter on impact. Certainly, I do not know of any organic molecule that could withstand such pressure.